want everything. Well, hello, welcome back to Riyadh, welcome back to Fight Week here. We are now just days away from the day of reckoning on Saturday night. Very simply put, one of the biggest, one of the best, one of the greatest shows ever put together in the history of boxing will be taking place right here in Riyadh. It's the second big boxing event of Riyadh season, and today, on a glorious day in this glorious city, we are actually in the Fight Week Hotel. There are fighters walking about. There's something in the air here, and what we have is Andy Clark and Mr. Pat Barrett, who we're just going to have a little chat with, just hours away from the press conference. Let me start with Mr. Pat Barrett here. Pat, what an incredible week it's been. What an incredible event. Of course, your man Lyndon involved against Dimitri Bivol. Tell us your thoughts on the size of this.
Well, for us, it is a big occasion. It's massive, big platform to be on it. I mean, it's like, wow, it's amazing. So it's an opportunity that we have to accept and we have to, deal with.
And in terms of we had the workout yesterday, those grand arrivals earlier on in the week as well. It's quite a spectacle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, we have been here before, not as big as this, but on a platform really I didn't think was built for us, made for us, and the impossible can be done. And I know being here, a lot of people are thinking that it is impossible and it is a mission impossible, but if I thought that, we wouldn't be here.
Well, let's bring in Andy Clark. Andy, you've been with me every step of the way this week so far. It's been quite an eventful week. What are your sort of highlights so far? How have you enjoyed Riyadh?
I've really enjoyed it. It's been everything that I expected it to be in terms of the scale of the event. Having been here at the end of October, so many fighters on this card. That first card was dominated by Fury against Ngannou, but there's interesting fights right from the top, right down to the bottom of this card. I mean, there is no bottom to this card, is there, essentially? And it's good to see a couple of big fights outside of heavyweight, one of which, Pat and Lyndon are involved in. I mean, the most interesting thing for me so far, probably, everybody's been talking about Joshua, as we generally tend to. It's been wilder for me, because I don't know how much you've seen from Impact, but like back in the day, not that far back in the day, he could bring a bit of a darkness to Fight Week. He'd talk about bodies on the record and stuff like that, and that seems to have gone with him now. He seems now to be very kind of zen, almost philosophical. He seems to be quite different.
You know what I noticed? I did get a few words with you there, and he did seem to be very pleasant, very, very like down talk. He doesn't have a bad thing to say, not even about Joshua. He comes across very nice. And I suppose that doesn't make it a bad thing in boxing. I think it's about what he can do. We all know he's a demolition man, and that right hand of his is dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of these guys. He doesn't, I guess, really need to say all that much when you've done what he's done. You don't really need to mark your territory out too much, do you? The boundaries are kind of obvious.
No, definitely not. I mean, he's like I say, he's a fearful puncher. He's also got good attributes as well. But he's just been out of action for a long time, so it'll be good to see how he deals with that, you know what I mean?
And some of his knockouts, by the way, they look like Pat Barrett knockouts from back in the day. I'm telling you, you had that power too, Pat.
Murderous left hook.
Oh, some left hook. What about Anthony Joshua? Let me just bring the conversation to him as well. A lot of people are talking about this fight against Wallin as a potential banana skin. Now, there's always scrutiny on whatever Anthony Joshua does. What have you made of his demeanour? Have you seen much of him this week, Pat?
No, I've not, but I think with Anthony Joshua, I mean, obviously he's changed trainers again, and again, Anthony Joshua is one of these where it depends what Anthony will turn up, because Anthony Joshua is a dark horse, and I think he's exceptionally done really, really well for the years that he's been in the game. And he says, I noticed something that he says it's with his 10th or 11th year of boxing, and if he's not improved now, then he shouldn't be. And I do believe a lot of him, it's within himself. It's about what he believes. It's not about what somebody can make you. Do you know what I mean? It's about what he believes himself, because when he gets in that ring and that bell goes, everybody goes backwards, and he's the only one going forward. So, in that aspect, it's all down to him.
What have you made of it all so far this week in terms of the Anthony Joshua side of it, Andy?
I mean, we kind of scrutinise him to the nth degree. He's used to it, but just because you're used to something, it doesn't mean you have to like it. And if you don't like it, it doesn't mean that you can't kind of make it known that you're not a massive fan of it. I think that's what we got at the Grand Arrivals, although there could be another reason for that. Fighters have lives, but things go on in the background, so you can never be absolutely sure. But I didn't mind the fact that he was a bit abrupt with us the other day. That was, that's par for the course sometimes. But I do find what you say there interesting, Pat, because when you get a fighter of that level, I mean, if he went to train with you, for example, like, he knows what to do.
Yeah.
You just have to get him to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the job with him, isn't it?
I think that's the thing. I think sometimes people think that, trainers make better fighters, and, it's not the trainers, it's the actual fighter themselves that need to believe what they're doing and what they're capable of doing, because if that's the way, it takes a long time for the trainer to program a fighter to be working together, trust each other, have a relationship, have an understanding. There's so much really that goes more into it. Nowadays, people think just jumping in training and then you ask them, how's it going? Oh, well, I've learned so much. And like, how? Do you know what I mean? What could you have learned? You was world champion before, you was this before. What's different? And it's about accepting. You can make a change. You can make a change for the better. But I don't believe that going with this trainer and that trainer is going to really make you the better fighter, unless you want to be that fighter.
It was interesting. I was watching an interview with Ben Davison yesterday, and he talked about how actually at times he has to rein Anthony in from going off and doing research and watching this video, watching that video, and different techniques kind of thing. He's just trying to simplify it somewhat. What do we think about that?
I think keeping it simple with him is definitely the best thing. I think that's probably, Pat would know a lot more than me. I think that's probably the best thing for anyone. The more simple the message, if they've got those fundamentals, then the better it is. But I wouldn't imagine you would be an enormous fan of a fighter of yours disappearing off and looking at other things and coming back into the gym and making his own suggestions. I mean, it's fine to be questioned to an extent, I guess, but you don't want it too much.
No, I think it's a joint thing, it's a team thing, and when, let's just say me, for example, I'll talk about what I know. When I was fighting, I never once watched anybody ever fought. Never. I left it down to Brian. And whatever Brian had me working on in the gym, it was like, okay, I trusted everything he said. And that was the thing, that was the greatest thing. And I think the way I train fighters is a bit it's similar to the way I was trained, because it's a legacy in our gym. And, we call the late Brian Hughes, the great Brian Hughes, the godfather of boxing, Manchester boxing. So he taught me so much in that way. So working with a fighter, it's about heel. And it's about having that relationship. And it's just like what you said, for him to be doing that, then it's like saying he's not confident in what the trainer's saying. And his trainer is actually very, very good. And so, he's got to learn to start trusting in him and working together as a team for him to pull it off.
What about the press conference today? We are now just hours away from it. Can we expect any fireworks? I'll come to you first, Andy. Are you expecting any hostility, any beef, a little bit of this and that? What do you think?
Well, you tell me.
I mean...
we did it back in, it was only a few weeks ago, wasn't it, in London, for the announcement press conference. We did have that situation where AJ went through Eddie Hearn for his questions rather than you. So there's some potential fun and games in the offing there, but outside of that, I don't know. It's hard to say sometimes, isn't it? We know Jarrell Miller's going to go off. That's a guaranteed. Mm-hmm. Daniel Dubois doesn't seem to mind it. He seems to quite enjoy it, actually. Otto Wallin and Deontay Wilder have had plenty to say during the week as well. I wouldn't imagine that will change especially, but I don't really feel like we're going to see anybody go off at the deep end and really react to it too much.
All right, well, Pat, before we let you go, let me just get your kind of final thoughts heading into this big opportunity for Lyndon Arthur against Dimitri Bivol, one of the hardest fights out there, it looks like, in boxing. He's a pound-for-pound star right now. What's Lyndon's mindset heading into this, and how's he going to do it?
You know what, I don't see it as any other fight, and, you know, remove everything away from it. People say it's the biggest, it's the toughest. Listen, every fight is the biggest and toughest, from making your debut, doing it wrong. There's no difference in rule. You know, it's the occasion and it's the people behind the occasion. It's like getting to a fighter's head that make them think, oh, but it's down to us to trim it down and just say, listen, we've done this a million times. We're here for a reason. We've come from the curb, and I mean literally from the sidewalk to be where we are today. So to us, it's a great achievement in every possible way. Win, draw, lose, whatever we walk away with, you know, we've done massiveness to be here, and we're grateful to be here. So we're going in this with nothing to lose, but everything to gain. That's the way I see it.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us, Pat.
Thanks.
We're gonna move out Pat Barrett, and we're gonna bring in, wow, Mr. Sonny Edwards. Well, look, Sonny, before we get into any of this fight week stuff, how are you?
I'm fantastic, to be honest. I mean, last week I was headlining in America, and now I'm supporting my best friend in the biggest show, it's pretty much a century, I think, in the biggest fight in his division a week later. So yeah, I'm great, to be honest. Boxing's good.
How are you finding Riyadh? Because yeah, as you say, you know, this is the biggest fight certainly of Lyndon Arthur's career as well. There's so many fights on this show where like careers are on the line. There's so much on the line, and they're really putting on a spectacle here. How are you finding it?
Yeah, I mean, I only flew in last night. So I haven't really got to see all too much, but I've been here. You managed to drag me just coming from my breakfast attire. You know what I mean? So I'm not really dressed for the occasion.
Still looking fly.
Well, I've got about 7 colours on me that I can see at the moment. But yeah, no shorts because we're assimilating with the culture and showing respect.
Good.
To the good Saudi people. So yeah, I've got my tracksuit bottoms on. But yeah, I've had a little look. I'm gonna go maybe shopping a bit later. I'm here with my partner, so yeah, it's nice.
Andy, it's turning into quite an eventful week, and there's so many characters around. You look around, like we've just seen Sonny Edwards, and we've brought in Sonny Edwards as well. So much more yet to come, though.
Yeah, I mean, fight weeks are funny, aren't they? Because they can feel like they're going on for quite a long time, but then all of a sudden you find yourself at the business end of it. I mean, you had it last week. You had a big build-up to your fight last week, and we're on Thursday now, and bit by bit, we're getting closer and closer and closer. And you do sense and see fighters change day by day, and that's kind of what I enjoy watching. Even at heavyweight, they don't have to make weight, so you don't see them physically change that much, and their mood might not be affected as badly as fighters who have to mentally prepare and make weight. But even so, day by day, you all, in your different ways, work yourself into that place where you're ready to go.
Yeah, well, it's like you're gearing up for war, really, isn't it? The train's gonna come at a certain time, and you know,
You have to get on.
Short people just walking out the changing room. You're getting on, and you know, a lot of the fights are big fights. A lot of fighters are up against serious adversaries and competitors. So yeah, I think it's a complete natural range of emotions to get a lot more serious, a lot more zoned in and tuned in to the job at hand. And I think it's important as well. I think, you know, if you act too blasé throughout the whole week, then you'll probably start the fight quite blasé. So yeah, I think you'll see a lot of people, as the fight gets a bit more closer, get a bit more serious with their demeanour, and not only that, their sleep, the conversations they're willing to have in their private life, like a whole lot of things change. But the only thing I can really liken it to anyone that's never been in the boxing ring, I guess, as a soldier about to get deployed to war, is, okay, you're not dodging artillery and bullets, but you know, what we actually do, look at my face, is genuinely dangerous. It's genuinely something that can take your liberty and take your life as you know it. So yeah, I think it's a complete natural range of emotion for the fighters, and you know, with the amount of attention, coverage, the names of fighters that are on the card, it's probably bigger than it ever has been for Pretty much all of them, to be honest. I think even like the ones that have been part of massive events, like those events were usually just them and the sort of the undercard. Like now it's, you know, you've got AJ, you've got Wilder as the chief support in a collision course, as long as they both win the fight each other. You've got obviously Bivol, my friend Lyndon, you've got Jay Opataya, you've got Daniel Dubois, Jerome Miller. You've got so many recognisable faces in boxing that, you know, everything times 100. And, you know, being in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and for a lot of time, for a lot of people, it'll probably be their first, unless they've been here before, for the fights they've had before, their first real introduction to this culture and this side of life. And it was mine, my first steps in Saudi last night. And yeah, of course it's going to be bigger, it's going to be a bit more alien, it's going to be outside of, I don't know, going to your local arena, maybe staying at home and going over just for the weigh-in and stuff. Like it's a whole different thing. Look at us. I mean, a lot of boxers haven't even been in a hotel this nice before.
No, it's incredible. Look, there's something very interesting I thought you said there about it's like a soldier being deployed to war. Now, these soldiers being deployed to war, they don't have to do press conferences where they're sitting down with their enemy like a couple of days beforehand. They haven't got to face off many times. We are now just hours away from the final press conference in Fight Week, where Anthony Joshua will come face to face with Otto Wallin. He'll be sat at a top table with Deontay Wilder, who I'm sure will have plenty to say, Jarrell Miller, who we know will have plenty to say. What are you expecting from the final kind of press conference here, just hours away from before they all fight?
Well, it's interesting really, because it depends on the fighters and the mindset they are for this fight week. I mean, sometimes people go with the intention to steal the press conference, especially one like this. It's probably more close to a UFC press conference style with, you know, the sort of all the names just chucked around on the table, more than boxing. You know, normally you have like the main card and then you've got the undercard that they'll sieve through quite quickly. Yeah, this is a whole different experience. So there'll probably be a few that will want to maximise and capitalise on the event, the marketability, try and get the headline, try and get the viral video of the moment. And there'll probably be some that are just taking it in their stride and are just zeroed in onto the fight. So, you know, you'll probably see a few to a back and forths. I feel like AJ seems to be the target for a lot of people out here. You know, I know Jarrell Miller and a few other fighters, they want that fight. Maybe they're seeing him now as a bit more easy work with his performances of his last couple, but I think that's a dangerous mindset to, you know, chase a fight because you think now they're easy. He's a very dangerous man. He can hit very hard. He won the genetic lottery twice. I think you just got to look at him to know that. He probably would never have to work out again. He'd probably still have an 8-pack, you know what I mean? Like, you know, but it's the truth in my opinion. And you know, there might be some that will target him, there might be target others. I think there will be something. I don't think it'll be boring. I think there's too many egos and too many people that want to be the man here for the whole card, and that includes the build-up, because the best professional fighters understand the entertainment side of it and understand capturing a wider audience because of the things you're doing kind of organically. It leads to much bigger opportunities, much bigger paydays, much better everything, to be honest. So yeah, I feel like people will take their chance for the press conference, but at the same time, you know, there's probably a few heads in there that just care about the fight on Saturday, and you know, getting to that and winning that will be the only thing they really care about.
Well, Andy, let me bring you in here, because let's talk about Anthony Joshua in particular. As Sonny mentioned there, it feels like he's got a bit of a target on his back from a number of heavyweights on this show who have been saying things about him, who will have the opportunity to do so at a press conference setting today where they're sat with him as well. Is there a danger he gets distracted by this? He's appeared pretty focused, but then he will get drawn into something with Jarrell Miller in a hotel lobby. He's sort of had no choice but to do that. Is there a danger he's a tad distracted?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think anyone's got under his skin. I think he's just sick of it. Because the thing with Miller on Monday, and we were around it, Jarrell Miller got wind of the fact that Anthony was in the vicinity and made sure he stayed until he could get up in his face. That's what happened. There was no escape there for Joshua. I'm not saying that he would have wanted to have escaped, but he could have lived without that. But it's just, part of what comes with the territory of being him, really, as he said to us the other day. And he did say as well that it depends what kind of level he feels the person is on. So he said that fine with Otto Wallin because I'm fighting him, so therefore I'm conceding that he's a good enough opponent for me, he's on my level. He doesn't feel that Jarrell Miller's on his level. He doesn't feel, I don't think, that Jarrell Miller really belongs in the sport anymore, and he's not alone in that opinion. So he finds it, I think, more irritating to hear it from somebody like him. Increasingly during the week, I'm getting the feeling that Otto Wallin could find himself in a very difficult spot on Saturday. That we could see a really good performance from Joshua. I'm just beginning to get that vibe.
Do you get that vibe, Sonny?
No, I'm a friend of AJ's and I have been since he was an amateur. I was a 12, 13, 14-year-old kid and he was in Elsfield watching me fight or have a gym show, whatever it was at the time. I've known AJ a long time. He, I think, is his biggest, worst enemy sometimes. I feel like if he wasn't built up the way that he was built up and sort of promoted the way he was promoted and sort of put on a pedestal and, you know, have a staff of like 500 people around him, if he was a bit more savage and a bit more raw, I'd be more confident for this. But with how he's been approaching, trying to go in there and go to 12 rounds, trying to box, trying not to get hit, I don't know, I think Wallin's definitely a dangerous competitor. I think he showed that in a few of his performances, you know, the most obvious one being the Tyson Fury fight. But at the same time, I feel like AJ's a monster, especially when he gets his feet on the ground and lets his hands go. So, yeah, there's every part of me that's sort of expecting a good performance from AJ, especially as he's always, since the amateurs, been good against the people that are the same height as him. He's always struggled, since the amateurs, struggled with people a bit more that were looking down, look like they shouldn't be in the ring with him. It's just always the way it has been with him. I don't know why. Maybe it's punching down, maybe it's you know, his mindset of what people are thinking he should be doing. I don't know. But yeah, for me, I've always favoured him and preferred him in the ring with people 6'6", 6'7", on the eyesight, because I feel like that's when he gets his best work and his best performances. Wallin's no small fighter. He's not like a 6'1" or 6'2", so I think, yeah, there's everything for him, but at the same time, what makes it so exciting is it's heavyweight boxing. Both can probably take each other out of there in a matter of seconds. Everything leads to AJ. I think he has the better depth and is a better fighter. But what happens is when you get in a boxing ring with your one eye on the next, what's going on next, and then your opponent's getting in the boxing ring to change their life, is there's usually a little percent sway. You usually drop a little 15%, you know, taking your eye off the ball, and they usually gain a 15%, putting it all on the line for this night. And I see that over and over again, and sometimes that 15% each way swap of I guess, ability and performance sometimes is enough. And will it be enough for this one? I don't know. I think Wallin's shown that he's very tough, he's very determined, he comes to have a fight, he puts it all on the line, he's not scared of getting hit, to give a shot, he doesn't go missing when he does get caught. So he's a very, very worthy adversary for AJ, and probably what he needs as well, coming through something like this, will set him up in a much better stead for that fight with Wilder. I feel like Hellenius and who was Franklin. The guy before? Franklin, yeah, I was there. Hellenius and Franklin, from where AJ's been performing, who he's been fighting against, the names that we could list on his resume, you're not coming to Hellenius or you're not coming to Franklin, you know? So Wallin's a better step in the right direction, and if he finishes that off with beating him and Wilder next year, then he could really put his career back in a position where he is pretty much the man again. He's the most marketed fighter in the world, boxing pretty much, especially on my side of the world. Maybe Canelo is the rival on that side, but it's good for British boxing. It's great for British boxing when AJ's doing the business. It really is. So hopefully he's got another few years, and physically he definitely does. You can see the shape he's in, his stature, you know, his training, but it's just about controlling the conversation he's having with his head whilst the action's going on in real time. I think that is the main thing yet to be seen. But I do think Ben Davison is probably going to be one of the better people trainers at getting into a fighter's head. I genuinely believe that. I feel like the way he approaches the sort of the mentality side of things, gets all the fighters around each other and sort of pushing the same narrative. I've seen it from the outside looking in, and I think what that can do is garner a lot of internal, innate confidence. And I think that's what AJ needs, because with confidence, he is one of the most physically threatening and intimidating men that walk this planet. But when he gets in the ring, sort of half apologetic of what he's doing sometimes, for me it takes all that away. So yeah, for me it's his mindset more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people have been saying that. Sonny, listen, we could speak to you all day. We're actually going to let you go and enjoy Riyadh. You only got here last night. Go and enjoy this beautiful city. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I can't wait to see what happens with yourself next as well. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate the time, boys.
Right, so I mean, we are just an hour and a half or so away now from the final press conference. The day of reckoning is on Saturday night, but before all of that, these fighters have got to look at each other. They've got to look into the whites of each other's eyes. They've got to chat a little bit to each other if they want. Andy, from the launch press conference those couple of months ago or whenever it was, really the man who stole the show was Jarrell Miller, because he sort of had a go at everyone. Are you expecting him to be the man who steals the show and, I don't know, has a go at everyone again?
Yeah, he could well be. He could well be. What kind of interests me about it too is the setup of it, because it's going to be split into two. So, you know, we'll have Wallin and Joshua and Wilder and Parker and Miller and Dubois, just to take the heavyweights. They're all going to be in one press conference together, along with Bivol and Lyndon Arthur. But what that means is that whilst the first one's going on, they'll all be backstage, and I'll be interested to see what the arrangements are for that, because when we did the sit-downs on Monday, one thing we noticed was that they just kind of came and went, and they were within each other's space quite easily if they wanted to be, which is how we got that situation with Joshua and Miller. So something might happen before they even get to the desk, you see, to get to the tables. That's something you see quite often. And Miller's the kind of bloke who will be looking to try and make that happen. So I think you'll get a sense of that when they come and sit down next to you as to whether anything has gone on backstage, because it is always a possibility. You've got to be careful with these guys. You've got to be careful, because as much as it feels like common sense will always prevail and they'll never jeopardise anything, if a line gets crossed, then you can have problems. And verbally, at least, at the press conference, when we get to it, he will look to cross lines. There's no question about that.
And the other headline, of course, was at the very end of that first press conference, I came to Deontay Wilder and I said, you know, you've talked about Anthony Joshua for years. You know, they're not fighting each other on this show. We know that. But we also can't ignore that there are reports about a future fight, and that there is a kind of semi-final-ish kind of feel to this. And at the end of the last presser, Deontay, anything you want to say to Anthony Joshua? And he was super, super respectful. He said, it's good to see you, good to be in the same room as you. Hopefully we have a fight one day. Even if we don't, I wish you all the best. Do you think he'll have that same energy today? Because you know I'm going to direct him towards AJ at some point.
I think he probably will. He's different now, as we were talking about before. He is different now, and he was talking to us about it on the stream yesterday and the reasons for it. In a way, I find this new age Wilder maybe even slightly more menacing than the old one, because he's still just as keen to switch your lights off as he always was. But the only difference now is that, you know, he'll pat you on the back and smile at you before he does it. So I don't think anyone needs to be fooled by that, and I don't think anybody will be. I don't think it's an act, but at the same time, yeah, he still carries that air of absolute danger with him. But I don't think you'll get that much of that from him today. But we are hearing, I was reading earlier today, that it's expected that contract will be signed by both of them before they fight on Saturday.
I mean, that could be the case. We don't know officially. All these reports are out there, but fascinating stuff when people are talking about the next fight, when there are banana skins very clearly. Look, Joseph Parker's one of the best heavyweights in the world. Otto Wallin is a southpaw at 6 weeks' notice for Anthony Joshua. There's all this best laid plans. Sometimes they unravel, especially in heavyweight boxing.
They do, and Sonny touched on it, and he's right. That percentage swing that you can get can make a massive, massive difference. It doesn't need to be as much as the 15%. I don't think that he mentioned. Just 5 at that kind of level. That'll do it. That will be comfortably enough. And it doesn't really matter how much you tell yourself that you're not going to fall into that trap. We still see people do it, because this generally isn't one of those sports where you arrange your fixtures in advance, because history tells us, as you say, that could be just a terrible, terrible idea. But that's where they are, and that may well be more how it is now for boxing when boxing comes here, because they want a bit of a plan. They want to know what's coming next, the authorities here, and they like the winner stays on, the kind of almost tournament feel to things. That's how they want to do it. They don't want this pure jeopardy that we're used to in boxing, where we want something but we're not sure if we'll get it, and we shrug our shoulders if we don't get it and say that's boxing. They're not really that interested in that.
No.
They're not, are they?
Not at all. They just want everything. And look, they are sprinkling this kind of magic dust on boxing right now, and it feels like we were speaking to Frank yesterday. It feels like we are approaching another golden era in boxing right now, because the fights that we want to see appear to be happening. Let's see.
Well, Fury Usyk on February the 17th, and then if we get Joshua against Wilder on March the 9th, that's those 2 fights. The undisputed fight for heavyweight, which we've been looking for the last 5.5 years, since all those belts were in the possession of 2 people, and Joshua Wilder, which we've been looking for exactly the same amount of time, will happen within the space of 3 weeks.
It's fascinating stuff. Well, listen, that's all we've got time for today. We are now just about an hour and a half away from the final press conference, where all these guys are going to be hopefully giving it a little bit of that. Cannot wait for it. Thank you so much for joining us.